Good evening. It's Monday, October 15, 2018, 6 p.m. This meeting is in the Neil Shapiro Auditorium, and it will be recorded live on WCAT. Ms. Hames, will you please record the roll?
Mr. Fabiano?
Here.
Mr. Matucci?
Yep.
Ms. Powell? Present. Ms. Moat? Here. Mr. Vecchia?
Present.
Mr. Perrin?
Here.
Mr. Capabianco?
Here. Mr. Perrin, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
2 weeks ago.
The flag is hidden. It's over there.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Do you have any public comment this evening? None. Any delegates and visitors? I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 24th, 2018 meeting.
Motion.
Second by Mr. Matucci. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant SVW 19-16, the amount of $228,116.17. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Swope. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. We do have a number of payroll warrants. Payroll warrant SPW 19-3 in the amount of $198,275.88, and SPW 19-4 in the amount of $187,128.80. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Fabiano,
Second.
seconded by President Vecchia. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Stay.
2 abstentions. And the ayes have it. And we do not have any budget transfers. We do have 2 buildings and grounds requests, one by the Winthrop Middle School PTO for the dates for their trick or treat and trot event. Also, the Beverly Richards Dance Center dance recital.
Motion to accept the uses.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Matucci, second by Mr. Fabiano. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The ayes have it. Subcommittee reports, Mr. Fabiano, Policy, Building Grounds Subcommittee. I'm sorry, Building and Grounds.
Ground
Yep.
first. So we had a subcommittee meeting today at 5 o'clock. Myself, Gus, Suzanne, Jen, Tino were all there. We were discussing with youth football, some different parts of the fees and all that weren't available to them in the past. They would like to use the scoreboard, the press box, and PA system for this Sunday and possibly another game or 2 going forward in the fall. Up to this point, it wasn't available to them in the fee structure, so we took the vote to allow them, if we were able to find a second person to work the game, to use the press box, the scoreboard, and the PA system. So we took the vote, it was 3-0 in favor of it, so they'll be using it as long as we're able to find an additional person to work the games.
Just be aware that there's a fee.
I was just going to ask that.
It's $35 an hour, and there needs to be a trained person in
That's what I
the
was
press
gonna ask.
box
This
with
person's
them
gonna be a
trained
trained person that knows,
on all the systems.
just like we've done here for the
Exactly.
auditorium.
Same thing.
Okay.
And we'll address this again in the spring. This is just to take care of youth football through this season, and then we'll see where we are, see what availability we have for the people that are working, that are trained. So before lacrosse starts up, because they're the only other ones for a youth program that uses the field, we'll address the situation again at that point in time.
Policy.
Okay, for the policy, we discussed the internet use policy and voted to make a change that will allow the high schoolers to use external email. So they'll be able to use Gmail accounts to reach out for academic purposes, like applying for colleges and doing research, but with limitations so that they're not abusing it and then reinforcing all of the controls that we have currently. That's going to be brought to our next meeting, correct? Yes. That'll be presented at the next meeting. We also have discussed the Chromebook policy, charging for, this is the internet use fee. We've discussed the possibility of charging per student for using the Chromebooks. We are also looking at the option of either buying or leasing them. This is to offset the cost of replacing the Chromebooks. We're doing some more research on that, and we'll continue to discuss that in the subcommittee. And then we also are discussing the composition and the way that the site councils are chosen. These are the committees that put together the school improvement plans, and they currently, the different schools have different ways of choosing the members and different ways of different compositions, and so we want to unify that so that everybody's doing it in the same way. We're conducting some research now to understand how each school is using their site council, how they're getting members, and where they may or may not be struggling. So there may be some need to increase communications around what the site council does and the joys and benefits of being a member of that, so that we can attract more people. And those are ongoing discussions as well.
Tina, do we have to take a full vote for that fee, that the $35 that we offered them?
I think it came out of subcommittee, I don't think we had to.
No, you have to vote on
Take a
it.
vote for the
Yeah, you
policy.
gotta take a vote for the fee structure, Chief.
For the fee structure?
So you're going to take it, you're going to take it off of not applicable, and you're going to insert the fee structure,
Yep.
correct?
Yep, so you want to make the motion?
Make a motion that we're going to change it to allow them to use the press box, PA, and the scoreboard as a fee of $35, where it wasn't allowable up to this point. So we're going to change that on the fee structure.
35 an hour.
Yep, 35 an hour.
Motion by Mr. Fabiano,
Second.
second by Mr. Matucci. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The ayes have it. Moving on, superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. So just a few items tonight. The first, I had put in your packet a copy of a lease for a special education vehicle. So week to week, I meet with the PPS director, Jen O'Connell, and we review not only special education tuitions and process and, upcoming students and class size and the structure and programmatic responsibilities within the district, but we also look at transportation. Transportation in special education is something that is a non-reimbursable transportation cost to the school district, and in my history of working with transportation, can be very costly. So we, as of right now, we have some of our own drivers. We have 4 drivers of our own that do daily runs, transporting students who don't attend the Winthrop Public Schools, but are Winthrop Public Schools students and attend out-of-district placements such as Shore Collaborative, and we have some schools being attended as far away as Beverly. Unfortunately for us, some of our school-owned vehicles, if you recall, a couple of months ago, we surplused a bunch of the vans that we had that were no longer usable. Anytime you surplus the vans and you take vans off the road, you have to still transport the child to where they need to be every day, and you are sort of at the mercy of the vendors to charge you how much money per day to drive students. We always get 3 quotes when we have to have a student transported by a private vendor, and the taxi companies and the special education private vendors are doing very well for themselves in terms of the costs. They're extremely high. So in working with Jen, one of the main items that we're looking at is how to consolidate those runs and look at the cost associated with driving the students ourselves, hiring a driver and a monitor, and leasing a vehicle. I have some vast experience in leasing vehicles and working with different vendors. And in this particular case, we have 3 students going to the same place, Shore Collaborative, as well as 1 student going just a little bit of a distance further. And they are all being transported by a private vendor right now. The cost associated with that projected out for the entire school year is about $8,284 per month to drive those 4 students to and from school, which is about a $70,000 line item that's non-reimbursable to the school district through, and not circuit breaker eligible either. So we looked at reaching out to 3 different vendors. New England Wheels is one vendor that's a pretty popular state on the state bid list to construct a vehicle for us, which would allow A current run that we have that we are doing ourselves in a sedan, we have a driver who transports 2 students to Shore Collaborative. If we purchased a lease-to-own style van, we could combine the private run with our own run, so we would not have to hire a new driver or a monitor. Take the students off of the private vendor run and take them out of the sedan and put all 6 students on one vehicle, and they would all be appropriately grouped, and then that one vehicle would be driven by our already paid-for driver. So we looked at the cost associated with that, and we have a line item for leasing, which one of our vehicles had run out this year for the lease. We own the vehicle now, so we're not faced with that cost. So there's about $9,000 in a line item. We reached out to 3 different credit companies, so we had New England Wheels and 2 other vendors build us a vehicle on paper, took the best price, which happened to be from a reputable vendor of New England Wheels, and then we reached out to 3 different credit companies to see how they could put that together in a lease over either a 3-year period or a 5-year period. And the reason that you do that is because for your budget purposes, you'd like to not be spending $70,000 per year to utilize, to get our kids to school. So, and the best credit that came through was a 5-year lease through Ford. Doing it for 5 years gets you to about the end of that lease, and usually right about when the vehicle itself is going to start to have some issues. We have been able to keep vans anywhere from 6 to 8 years or even longer, and then we utilize those vans also for athletics if in fact we can allow athletics to use them. In this case, it's a general line item budget, so it wouldn't preclude us. We're not paying for it out of a grant on the monthly lease, and therefore we could allow other groups to utilize it. It will be under the pupil personnel director in terms of monitoring the vehicle to make sure that it's being serviced appropriately, and that if anyone is to use it, that approval process happens between the PPS director and the athletic director. I do need to bring it before town council because 3-year leases in the public school, we can do without a vote of the town council. Anything beyond a 3-year lease needs to go through the town for approval because that's the process. School districts are bound only to be able to approve their own leases for 3 years. So I've been working with Monica Ford and Susan, as well as Jen, and that will be going before the town council. When I looked at the amount of savings per year, and this was not an unexpected cost, but the cost of transportation is rising up, and again, we're trying to get that line item down to put that money to better use within the school system. If we move in this direction and we lease for approximately $8,103.90 per school year, over a period of 1 year, we'll save approximately $62,000. Therefore, I just wanted to bring it to your attention that we will be asking the town council to approve that lease and then move forward with reconvening, restructuring the run. We do not have to pay an additional driver, like I said, or an additional monitor, because that person already exists. The other nice thing about it is we are going to be freeing up the sedan. And we had the blue van, which is the athletic van, blew a tire on Route 1 last week while we were headed out, I believe, to the Topsfield Fair with some of our students in it. So we'll make some good use of the sedan. The blue van has been fixed and is safe for the students, but the sedan may now be used for the life skills class for their jobs. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Question about that. Will we have fuel costs in addition that will offset the 62,000 savings?
So maybe a little bit. Right now, the sedan is traveling daily anyway to that same spot, so it's a bigger vehicle. It'll cost a little more to fuel up, and then if we keep the sedan on the road, so you'll see a little bit of an increase in terms of insurance. We do have an insurance line already in the line item budget, and the maintenance line, which we have not gone over. There should be very little maintenance on it, but initially it's 7D sticker, the registration, and I believe that's all included in the first year of the lease. But then the maintenance, any maintenance, we change the oil religiously. We keep books on the oil being changed so that we're sure to, and that's, if I'm correct, it's $29.95 from Expert Auto, hasn't changed in 6 years to change the oil. Big cost of the tires. on those vehicles as you move forward. Has all the proper signage. It's a 7D licensed vehicle, and I think it's a smart move.
Do you have any ideas of what you want to do with that savings? Do you want to put it back into the circuit breaker, or?
So had we not done this, we would be scraping for the cost of we would be scraping to find the $62,000. So I'm not sure what the offset will be. Any offset in transportation, if it's special ed transportation, most likely, circuit breaker would be the place to go. We would have been going to circuit breaker to pay the bills to Ride Right had we not made this change. So it'll definitely keep us from having to dip in to circuit breaker if there's even anything left in circuit breaker at the end of the year. So I think it makes financial sense, and we do this at least every 2 weeks in terms of looking at outside vendor runs, how we can combine them. We're at the mercy of transportation companies out there, which is no different than any other special education program. We are fortunate that our homeless transportation has been way down. We have really tightened up on figuring out who requires transportation and then billing, no longer billing other districts. We take care of our 50% on our own. There are some times where we can pick up a student on our own as opposed to having to vendor it out. So we no longer leave that up to the community. One community is usually the community that decides on the vendor. Boston Public Schools spends millions of dollars on homeless transportation, so they're not as picky and penny-wise as we are, because it's a business to them that they really don't have a big choice. We're so small that we're a little bit picky about the vendors we use to transport the students, and cost is a piece of that. Moving forward, and so I hope to have a favorable vote from the town council. I did put forth the request to them in a very detailed fashion so that there's not a lot left unanswered when they go to take the vote. Other items, athletics, the vocational school students, I'm sure you see them working on the field house that we're building. The last Miller Field Committee meeting talked about them finishing up at the end of this school year, and if they don't think that they're going to be ready for the end of the school year, Miller Field will reconvene to talk about having someone else finish up so that we can be open and up and running. I'll be happy with that because the cost of those 3 toilets out there is not fun to have to pay. However, I would imagine by the end of November, I believe it's November 25th, we'll probably be closing down Miller Field for the winter, so we'll return the toilets, and we won't be incurring that cost any longer for the school year. In the facilities department, the Bobcat has been ordered, so capital improvement monies that were given to us, we've already expended the money on the Chromebooks that the town had provided us with the cost for, so those have all been ordered and are in. The Bobcat has been ordered. Other items in facilities, when we had police and fire do their walkthrough, we've been staying on top of all the recommendations that they have made with the custodians and the principals, and I am happy to report that we have ordered several walkie-talkies, Raptor systems, which is what you slide your license in and it prints out a picture if you're a visitor in the building. We needed to fix 2 of those to make sure that they were working appropriately for safety reasons. We had to remove some snow blowers out of the Cummings School. I understand that they've been there every year for years in a row, but without the gas in them, but it's still a safety hazard. I believe that Rich Sufini is working with the town and with McHale, our facilities director, to build a new outdoor shed over by the E.B. Newton that will be a split town and school shed, where we'll be able to store the Bobcat in. So we're kind of excited about that. And we're also looking at a potential of getting a 4-wheeler with a plow on it with some extra savings that R.J. Ray Lepresti has been able to squander some of his money by bulk ordering toilet paper and paper towels and some other items. He feels that if he can get a good price on one, and McHale, he'll work with McHale and Rich, that just the manpower alone of buzzing through the Cummings and around the circle to open up space to make it safe will save a number of man hours. All of this translates into savings in overtime, custodial overtime, and people going out on workman's comp from the heavy shoveling. I talked about the van. I am an audit magnet by nature, so we have a circuit breaker audit coming. Circuit breaker return's supposed to be 75%. The state's reporting it at 73. I'm anticipating a bump for that. But they are going to come out and audit our books. I'm confident that what we expect to receive, we will. I worked a little bit with Jen on just some pointers about in-district claims, and so I feel strongly that that will come out clean. Some good news about the band. Viking Pride, it worked with the band. We made some suggestions about if there was some misperception of what Viking Pride does and how good they are to our school district beyond athletics. So Viking Pride worked with the band to talk about some funding for a couple of different things, some sheet music, as well as an after-school band practice for some of our older students. They felt like they were sort of being gypped in terms of the band, so we are giving them the use of the band room on Fridays, and through Viking Pride and the Winthrop Band Parents Association, if I have that right, they will be hiring somebody to work with the students within the building, and Mr. Crombie is coordinating the use of the band room to make sure that we allow that to happen, so our students get some extra band practice in. The kids were pretty pumped about that. I will work out the details. I'm meeting on Friday with the president of the Winthrop Band Parents, so I can sort of help her walk through how she may pay that, making sure that if Viking Pride is making a donation to her, it's a little different than if they're making a donation to the school, because we would have to accept that, and so we'll work those details out on Friday. Two more little things. Thank you to the town council for the cost of, they had appropriated money for the cost of a kindergarten teacher and an aide, as well as the materials and supplies for that room. There have been multiple meetings that have been fruitful in nature, I must say, in figuring out how we're going to hire somebody and how we're setting up the classroom and what we need to do in the meantime to get ready for that, communication with the parents and whatnot, which I'll speak on under new business, but I wanted to put out a thank you for the collaboration and the really good questions by people who don't do this for a living that they asked. And some folks may say, well, they were asking the same question 3 times. You have to. If you're going to give somebody over $100,000 to make something happen, you probably should ask all the details, and they did. So I was very pleased with their questions, and I am hoping that they are pleased with the results of the kindergarten. There was some money appropriated for preschool as well. They're 2 very big projects. We need to get the kindergarten piece up and running, and then take a deep breath, and then take a look at the preschool piece of it and how we may manage some additional support for preschool. So more to come on that later. MCAS results, they've been released. We did a working meeting. The curriculum director, Lori Gallivan, and myself met with some of the school committee members in a working meeting to explain the new accountability guidelines and how the new test scores under the Next Generation MCAS were delivered. It's super confusing. And for the people who do this every day, it's super confusing. There's a lot of frustration around how the indicators were developed and how much weight went to certain aspects like dropout rate, participation rate. So we did our best to explain that to some of the committee members so that when the principals come out to give you a presentation on how we fared, you will have a sense of understanding of how does the state come up with this. I think the most important takeaway was you can't compare these test results to any other MCAS test results that we've had in the past. And that's not coming from Winthrop Public Schools or Lisa Howard, or it is coming directly from the state. And they are asking us to use this as sort of the baseline and the floor for movement forward with our students. We are working diligently with our teachers to help explain this new accountability system and what it means and why we feel strongly that it's a good baseline for them. It's a little behind the time in terms of you get your test results after you've already got your school year up and running. The positive thing about the Winthrop Public Schools is we knew that. We knew the test results come out late. We use a whole bunch of other types of assessment data to see where our kids are. We don't sit back and wait for the MCAS scores to come out to figure out they're going to be another level of assessment. But it's one, I think people need to understand, the MCAS is one assessment of our students' abilities. We assess our kids in a lot of ways. The MCAS assesses their academics. We assess them academically in multiple ways, but also athletically, in the arts, in their social emotional development. But it is one piece of an assessment of the students of Winthrop Public Schools. And I am happy to report that we had some really nice progress, and I think we're headed in the right, I know we're headed in the right direction with the planning. This can only enhance our thoughts and our push forward to do things, whether it be a little bit differently or have a stronger focus on a certain area based on what the MCAS results will be. So at your next meeting, last meeting in October, I've asked the principals to provide you with some of that data in a way that you can understand it, that it tells a story, and that it doesn't put you to sleep, because I can tell you, it can, if you spend hours perseverating. The perseveration of hours in detail belong to the teachers, and they belong to the principals. You certainly can get more involved in that, but the overall look at the public school, I think, is the most important story to tell. And then how are we going to be holding our principals accountable and our teachers accountable to make sure we make progress. And I believe, just one other item, you had all kinds of stuff in your packet about the calendar of events, and you can go into that during the end when we talk about if anyone has anything else they want to add. But one thing that's pretty neat, I ran into Rosemary McCarthy today, but I had also been speaking to her through email. Our STEM kids have decided they'd like to join the FIRST robotics competition. This is a well-known competition where kids build a robot that participates in athletic events. So it's it's interesting. It's taking, the athletic side and kind of slamming it into the STEM side and seeing how that works. Being invited to participate was huge. We also, sure through Rosemary's discussions and her savvy, spoke with the regional director, Steve Kramer, and they are going to offer us about $4,000 in grants. It's about a $6,000 investment. $4,000 of that is hopefully coming our way in grant, and Rosemary is working diligently on planning how to fundraise for the additional $2,000, and she's working with the kids to do that. That's sort of their buy-in, and I have full confidence that she will make that happen. And I know that our kids will love it. They were super excited about doing it. So I will keep you updated on that as well, and that is all that I have.
Moving on, we do have some items on the personnel. We do not have any appointments this evening. We do have one resignation. Meredith Hurley, who is a nurse at the high school, who's a fantastic person and did a wonderful job, has resigned. We do not have any retirements. We posted a position for a nurse at the high school. At the middle school, a Saturday morning detention monitor. As well at the middle school, a STEM club advisor and a literacy lead teacher at the Cummins School. We do not have any leave of absences. Moving on to new business, why don't we go to the kindergarten selection plan
Sure.
first, and then we'll go to my resolution.
Okay, just to touch on Meredith Hurley, if I could just
Yeah.
reel back and say one thing about Meredith. Meredith is an awesome nurse. She is not leaving us, not going too far. She is becoming the town of Winthrop's Director of Public Health and Clinical Services. I expect to see her as much as I have seen her in the public school. She's a huge advocate for making Winthrop one big place. So I'm excited that she's going to hold this role because I think it will add to the school. We will be looking for a certified a nurse, a registered nurse with certification in school, have a school-based license, a health-based license, and Meredith has agreed to assist with that process, but also to have a transition process. Austin, the town manager, and I talked about the need for that process to take place so that we're not left without a nurse. So the kindergarten classroom student selection process, the committee has been involved in all of this discussion and support, as well as the town council has. I felt it important that the committee approve the process of the selection. I want you to know that I reached out through the superintendent's listserv to find out how many other superintendents around have had to put a kindergarten teacher or a like teacher in place mid-school year. And I asked the question because as I became more involved in the process, and of adding a teacher, it becomes very clear about the disruption it causes. So you have 6 kindergarten classrooms that are already up and running with 6 groups of 26 kids in a room who have become very attached to their teacher, their peers, the process, the routine of the classroom. And because we have to create a smaller class size for educational purposes, and so that our kids can learn, we need to disrupt that already put together, group. So transitions are hard in general for 5-year-olds. I can't think of a better place to have to go through one of those transitions than we're surrounded by kindergarten teachers who transition kids every single day to the bathroom, to the water table, to a reading group. So I feel confident that the teachers will do an amazing job at that.
Please go to period 3. Period 3 will start in 2 minutes. Period 3. Thank you.
But I do know that the transition for the parents is going to be equally, if not more, disruptive and concerning. So I felt like putting something in writing for the committee to understand and approve in terms of the selection process and defining the classroom configuration. I sat with the principal, Ms. Pearson, the assistant principal, Andrew O'Leary, Jen O'Connell, the PPS director, and Julie Fodiatis, the ETL. And we also had input from all the kindergarten teachers in developing the process. Kindergarten teachers by nature, they're not thrilled that they have to let students go. For general purpose, there has to be general understanding, there has to be controls put in place because there are certain students that cannot be moved. There are certain students that can't be moved because of their special education programming or because of an extenuating circumstance unrelated to special ed that had been agreed upon prior to us notifying parents that we were going to move students. I am confident that the principal has all of that in control, and in conjunction with her staff will be able to identify those students. So the teachers will be very involved in identifying those students who can't move. And then in your packet, you will see that we put together an overview of the process. There is much more detail involved in this. However, the 4 steps that we are planning to take in terms of the process are here for your understanding. So it's to notify, as of the 17th of October, to notify the parents and guardians of the current kindergarten students of the opportunity to have their child considered as a student who would voluntarily move into the new classroom. And we will be notifying those parents in writing. They'll have the opportunity to say, yes, I would like my child to be one of the children that you move. That allows the parents to have say in it, and it also allows the principal and the teachers to look at a select group of kids in a first round of decision-making. In the second round, on the 24th, the principal team, which consists of the principal, the ELL staff, kindergarten teachers, and the educational team leader, will identify the volunteer students who are able to be placed and other students who are eligible to be considered for the new classroom placement. That means those students who were not excluded from the process for extenuating circumstances, and they'll conduct a random selection process, which we have narrowed down to 6 sort of sections of kids or placements, and going through a process of randomly picking students, and on a very sophisticated graph of, you have to take 3 students from each classroom. So we're going to make one classroom of 18 students. It may be more attractive for parents who want to volunteer to know that that class initially is going to have 18 students in it versus the other classes, which will have 23. So if you have 6 classes of 26, we have to take 3 from each class. Of the 3 students from each class, there has to be equity in the design, so it cannot just be a random selection where you would pick 3 students and randomly, and they might all be students who are ELL students. You have to have 1 general ed student, 1 ELL or 504 student, and 1 special ed student from each classroom. So after we get the volunteers placed in this sort of elaborate graph, we'll then move to the random selection process. So if 2 students had volunteered from 1 classroom, and they happen to be a general ed student and a special student with special needs, then that classroom would only have 1 pick left, and that would need to be fit in the elaborate graph of most likely an ELL student would come out. So they have the graph itself laid out for equity, and the new classroom built with no students in it of similar equity. Step 4 Step 3, between October 30th and November 5th, the principal team will reconvene to review the class placements and then finalize them. The reason they need to do that is to make sure that they're not overlapping, or we had a new student registered today for kindergarten, so that student is going to need to be in that mix too. So when we get that final list done, they'll have that in front of them, and then on or about November 9th, the principal is going to notify the parents of the students selected for the new classroom and reveal a transition schedule of potentially over the Thanksgiving break. Now, in the meantime, we understand that we need to meet with parents. We understand that we need to hire a teacher and an aide. We understand that that teacher and aide should be here before the transition day so that they can go into the classroom. Those are some of the intimate details that you're not seeing here in the actual process. Other little things like parents being able to meet this new teacher and the new aide. If you're going to have a new classroom, we get that opportunity at the beginning of the school year. I think it's important to know that the selection process that I would ask for approval on is no different than the selection process that takes place over the summer when we initially make our classrooms. The only difference is we're taking kids out of existing classrooms. Over the summer, you went from preschool or you went from second grade to the summer. So that was your natural transition time. Now we're actually making a new transition in the middle of the year. But the process of how kids are divided up with equity is no different than when the principal selects kids for every classroom at the beginning of the school year. So I'll take any questions that people may have.
Lisa, typically... I just want to start with the motion so that we can discuss and ask questions. So I'll make a motion that we approve the process that Ms. Howard has outlined for selecting a new kindergarten teacher.
I'll second. So obviously, we have a motion by Ms. Powell. I second the motion. Let's start with discussion. Let's just go through. Mr. Vecchia, do you have any comments? Mrs. Swope?
Lisa, typically, how many students come into the system between now and, let's say, the next 6 months?
It varies. We've had, I would say since the end of September, we've had at a minimum 4. We've also had 2 students leave the system. So it's usually not much. It's certainly not what we expect in July and usually the first week in August. The bump we had from September 1st to September 10th was very unusual. So I'm not expecting many more, but any new students that come in would be placed in the classroom of 18.
Right.
In that one particular classroom, and that's why we're leaving room in that classroom.
Okay, thanks.
And we're leaving room because it's a transition time and less students in the room to get them through the transition would be helpful.
Mr. Matucci?
Just the location, it says in the kindergarten wing. Do we have a specific room? Do we have?
So, yes, they're working on that now. It's going to require moving some folks around, so we have not finalized that yet, but we had a pretty good idea last Friday of how that was going to look. Ideally, because there are bathrooms in most of the kindergarten classrooms, some do not have bathrooms. We have redesigned that floor. It used to have 2 faculty bathrooms, and we removed those 2 faculty bathrooms because we added the additional preschool classroom on that floor, and there's 16 little ones that need to use a bathroom, and that new preschool classroom did not have a bathroom in it, so we had to take 2 of the faculty bathrooms away. We actually had a physical therapist come in and design step stools and hand washing stools, and we ordered those materials to make it safe. Toilet height is a big deal when you're 4 and 5. So it will be in that wing, so all the kindergarten will be on one floor.
So preschool is staying where it is?
So
to that bathroom?
So
or-
right now, with the plan, the initial plan was to move a small group classroom to the second floor, to move that second floor classroom that it would bump into to a half-size classroom on the first floor. If that can be done, they were still working those details out. There are other options that we have. We're trying to do the least number of body movements. And looking at stairs. Stairs is another big deal, pre-K to 2, who can go up and down the stairs without, a lot of supervision.
Mr. Perrin? I just wanted to say I'm empathetic towards the fact that this might be a stressful time for some parents, worried that their kids might be pulled from classes, but I think this is a necessary move in order to reduce class sizes. And I want to thank everyone who was involved with this collaborative effort, especially the school committee, Mrs. Howard, the council, and especially the town manager who, despite being brand new, showed real leadership with this. And obviously, I want to thank Speaker DeLeo and Senator Boncory, who also advocated with Mr. Faison as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a collective discussion.
So I have a follow-up question on the location issue, which is, I thought that the intention was for the preschool to go down to the high school.
So that was part two, so I knew that question was going to come up at the town council meeting. You know, did I believe, as the superintendent, after speaking with the principal and looking at the layout, was that a must-do in order to open the classroom? And I was pretty clear that it's not a must-do. Certainly, when you swap two groups, it would make it a lot easier. I've had now 2 meetings since the town council meeting. I think about 3 minutes after the town council meeting, I had a lot of feedback from preschool parents who were panicking that now preschool was going to move. I had good feedback from teachers. Some teachers would like to volunteer to do that. Because it is such a big transition for both groups, the principal, as well as myself and the special ed director, felt that we needed to get the kindergarten piece under control first, make sure that we got that up and running. That's the most important piece, to get that class size down, and not afterwards, but in the meantime, continue to work on the preschool and see how that would phase out. Because the preschool is integrated preschool, there are a lot more factors in terms of students with special needs and how we can move them and what does that constitute. So that's a little bit of a deeper look than kindergarten moving as a general education class. So we're in the middle of that. I just can't be real clear about how that's going to happen, when it's going to happen, until I can get the preschool. We looked at waiting until Christmas, so that if we wanted to attack both things right away at the same time, I think Christmas was the closest, that Christmas break, because you want to do sort of a natural break more than an overnight, more than like a Friday, Saturday. And if you think about it, you need time to physically move. We're talking about a lot of furniture, and we have to order furniture for the kindergarten classroom anyway. It did not cost, I think it cost me $50 to move the preschool from here to the middle school, to the fort, and that was for the pizza for the football team. So those boys did a ton of work, and they busted it. Right now, I can't ask them in the middle of a Friday to move one class across town again, but we're looking at all those options. So as of right now, the plan that we have down pretty solid is the selection process, and I would say I hope by this Friday, we'll know what the classroom is so that we can begin working on the next, where that classroom's going to be. It is going to be in the kindergarten wing. And whether it's going to be a room with a bathroom or not is up for discussion right now.
Okay, and then I have one other question on the, you said there'd be 3 students from each classroom, 1 special needs, 1 ELL, 1 regular student. So the composition of that class will be evenly split, third?
So it'll definitely be evenly split, a third, and a third. We have 1 classroom in particular that has a higher number of ELL students, so we're working on whether or not we might end up taking 2 of the total ELL students out of that 1 particular classroom. All their schedules, for a broader picture, all the student schedules are already in place. So ELL kids are already grouped. So they're being pulled out, based on the total amount of minutes that they're supposed to be, whether it's a 90-minute or a 45-minute. And then some of those kids, the schedule of the ELL teacher doing push-in goes into that classroom to meet the needs of maybe the 5 kids that are in there for push-in. So we have to be careful who we take out. And so that's the need to set those controls of the classroom. Believe me, when it was discussed, I don't know that anybody really knew the depth of planning involved, but once you start looking at it, like, oh no, we can't move that kid. Well, if you move that kid, now you need another teacher to teach another period of ELL or another period of speech and language. So we put all that on a big map, and we're able to sit down and figure out who could move, who couldn't, how fast we could do it. And so we determined that best for the kids to do it now, because the longer those relationships build up to Christmas, and then we come back after the holiday, and the staff felt strongly that that was too far away.
Do you have to do a boy-girl ratio as well?
Oh, sure you do.
or-
Of course you do. Yep.
Another wrinkle.
Yep. What I can tell you is there are many more girls in the kindergarten. The ratio to boys to girls is a little bit different. So there are, we may be, we're female-heavy in kindergarten, which is good. But we do have to look at those ratios, which I didn't think about myself at all. That's why we have Eileen.
I just want to express appreciation for including parents in the process. I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
excellent to start with a parent volunteer, because that way you can, there are parents who may see the benefit for their child to
Right.
be able to go through that transition.
Right, and that, I did think about that, and, initially, whether or not we should ask the parents to volunteer. And you may have 5 volunteers from one classroom, which would be a disaster, because we can only take 3 students per classroom, because the idea is to go from 26 to 23. So we even have a plan in place for, if 5 students volunteer out of one particular classroom, we actually have to do a random selection of the 5. And of the 5, we can't take 3 randomly selected ELL kids unless that's an ELL heavy class. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I feel like we have it laid out pretty well. And we'll be able to do that. And we are, certainly, parents got a notification today from Ms. Pearson, and we have received many emails from parents. We have been sharing those between Eileen and myself. If I've received them, I've shared them with her, and so forth. So we are taking parents' concerns, bringing them right back to the teacher, and then that end result of who can and can't move is certainly going to be determined by the principal, as it always is, based on the information that she collects.
Any further discussion? Ms. Hames, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Fabiano?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yep.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Mr. Vecchia?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Thank you.
The ayes have it. All right. Moving on, I'd like to quickly present a resolution that I am in favor of, and I'll tell everyone how I came to put this forward, then go around the room and hear what everyone's opinion is and open up to discussions. So if you know me, I'm involved in various groups and organizations, and I try to keep all those worlds separate. But recently at Mass Association of School Committee meetings, we were discussing different school committees throughout the Commonwealth that have been putting resolutions forward in favor of question 3, which is an anti-discrimination ballot initiative that's on the ballot this November. Mass Association of School Committees were involved in a ballot initiative back in 2016, which we were in favor of. This year, so far, 21 municipal boards, including a number of school committees, have also endorsed question 3. And as I was thinking about putting this forward, I ran into someone who actually a few years younger than me on the train a few weeks ago, who's volunteering for the campaign and identifies as transgender. And this person told me it'll mean a lot to them if we put this forward. And I did some thinking, and I thought it was the right thing to do. So I'd like to read this and then open up to discussion. So Town of Winthrop School Committee. A resolution reaffirming Winthrop Public Schools and Massachusetts non-discrimination laws prohibiting discrimination in places of public accommodation on the basis of gender identity and gender expressions offered by School Committee Chair Valentino Capobianco. Whereas the Massachusetts House of Representatives and Senate approved the addition of gender identity to the Massachusetts public accommodation laws on July 7, 2016. And whereas Governor Charlie Baker signed this legislation, an act relative to transgender anti-discrimination, Senate Bill 2407, into law on July 8, 2016. And whereas the updated public accommodations law has been in full effect since October 1st, 2016. And whereas the Winthrop School Committee has demonstrated a deep commitment to its motto, one community open to all. And whereas the November 6, 2018 statewide election includes a ballot question seeking to repeal this provision in the Massachusetts public accommodation laws prohibiting discrimination on the basis of gender identity in places of public accommodation. And whereas repeal of this law would have a devastating effect for transgender and gender non-conforming members of our community and would be against principles we as a school committee uphold and reaffirm. And be it resolved, we, the members of the Winthrop School Committee, do hereby express our commitment to defend transgender equality in Winthrop and will hereby pledge to sign on to Freedom for All Massachusetts. Yes on 3 coalition to say clearly discrimination has no place in Massachusetts and no place in Winthrop. Be it further resolved that on this day, the 15th day of October, 2018, a copy of this resolution to be spread upon the records of the Winthrop School Committee. And after discussion, I also have some more comments. So I'd like to make a motion to approve this. Do I have a second for the purpose of discussion?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Fabiano. And I'd like to open up to discussion. President Vecchia, any comments?
My only concern, Tino, Mr. Chairman, is that you have this under new business, but it's not stated what the resolution was for. And I'm a little concerned that, parents have not had an opportunity to come here and ask questions or voice their concerns, being that we are the governing body of the school department, and we develop policy. And if we want to go forward with this resolution, then obviously we have to have a plan to implement the policy. That's my concern.
Well, I think the policy is just saying we support what's already in place. This law was already in place, and we're saying we don't want to have anything taken away. That's basically what it's saying. We want to keep what's already on the books. We don't want to take any rights away. Mrs. Swope?
Yeah,
Mr. Matucci?
I'm not sure that, as a committee, this is something, I mean, if it individually, obviously, people could do whatever they want, but as a board, like Mr. Vecchia said, we're a policy board, we set budget, we hire and fire the superintendent, she does a good job, and I just don't believe that this is something that we should adopt on behalf of the school department. Individually, people on the board can do whatever they choose. I'll be honest with you, I haven't really read or studied any of the questions that are on the ballot, and I'll be doing that obviously before I vote, but I feel very strongly that this is not something that we should do as a committee on behalf of the school department.
Mr. Fabiano?
I don't know politically if this is something we're supposed to do or not supposed to do, so that I don't know. I don't know the past, the history of other situations like this. But as I was reading your resolution, I happened to read a letter that my daughter sent me right after I won the election to be for school committee. And one of the sentences says, "I know my dad will make sure everyone is equal in the town of Winthrop." So I'll be voting yes.
Mr. Perrin?
I think that parents have some concerns about the legislation. I, just like you, Mr. Matucci, have not fully vetted out what it is that's being asked of us here. I would ask that we table it until we had an opportunity to get some feedback and to really dig in and read exactly what it is that I'm supporting.
I definitely understand your opinion. I just disagree. I'd just like to quickly read off some organizations and stakeholders in the state that endorse it. With law enforcement, it's endorsed by the Massachusetts Chiefs, the Police Association, Massachusetts Major City Chiefs, Massachusetts Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers, and the business community, again, just to name a few. It's been endorsed by Bain Capital, the Coca-Cola Company, Google, Microsoft, Nike, Oracle, Lyft, Planet Fitness. In government, it's been endorsed by 27 mayors, Governor Baker, Speaker DeLeo, our whole federal delegation, including Senator Warren and Markey, 21 municipal boards. That includes school committees, aldermen, city councils, so forth. Multiple universities, including Harvard, Northeastern, Tufts, Boston College Law. A number of education coalitions, including Massachusetts Association of School Committees, AFT, MTA, BTU, 15 labor unions, including the AFL-CIO and the Mass Nurses, and every single Boston sports team, including Red Sox, Celtics, Patriots, Bruins, and the Revolution. It's something I'm in favor of. We're not giving anything. We're just saying we don't want any rights taken away. I think what's going on in the world, I think leadership needs to be bold. Again, Mr. Perrin and Mr. Matucci, I understand what you're saying, but it's just something I feel strongly about. And when I saw someone who I know who changed his life and said that this is something that's important to them, I felt strongly about it, and that's why I feel the need to do that. So, Ms. Powell?
Question for Ms. Howard.
the law was passed in 2016?
2016, and it was implemented, I have it right here. It was passed, it was signed into law in July 8, 2016, and it was in full effect October 1st, 2016.
Okay. Did that change, result in any changes to our policies in our allowing bathroom access?
So, and I'm not overly savvy on the information that he presented in, in terms of the dates and what it related to, but my guess is, around about that same time, the Office of Civil Rights put out a statement and part of their compliance law. And I'm not sure if this is related to or anything different, or something substantially different than what Mr. Capabianco is asking for. However, Winthrop Public Schools has a statement on all of their emails, and certainly it's in our policy handbook, and it is an Office of Civil Rights compliance law that school districts must state that the Winthrop Public Schools does not discriminate on the basis of race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, national origin, age, gender, identity, disability, or homelessness for employment, participation in, admission, and access to, or operation and administration of any educational program or activity in the school district. So the school committee took a vote to accept that, not that we had a huge choice, because that was part of the Office of Civil Rights asking all school districts in the Commonwealth to come into compliance. I did not bring the timing of that law. I'm very aware that it is in the coordinated program review under civil rights, that they check for that to make sure that that is a statement that is on all of our working conditions when we hire people. Certainly my staff has it on their emails. It's best practice. You don't have to have it there, but it is best practice. And I believe it is one of our policies. I'd have to look up the change in the policy. And in terms of gender-neutral bathrooms and facilities, we have not had, to my knowledge, any Office of Civil Rights complaints or findings that we haven't been compliant with that. We do have facilities that are, bathroom facilities that are neutral, that can be accessed by both staff and students in their own areas, a staff bathroom and a student bathroom that is non-bias in terms of the labeling on the outside of the room itself. But in terms of how this is related to that, I don't have enough background on what Mr. Capabianco is asking you to take a stance on, so how it's related to question 3, I'm not sure.
So my understanding of question 3 is it is repealing a law that is in place, and that law was requiring places like schools, and I think it was not aimed primarily at schools, but other places, to allow gender-neutral access to bathrooms and locker rooms, et cetera. So the fact that we are in compliance with that law is wonderful, and allowing access. And the question would be then, what would happen with our student population or our policy should that law be repealed? That enables us to then, not that we would, but it does enable a committee to step in and to eliminate those potentially eliminate those gender-neutral opportunities for students.
Yeah.
So that would be my concern, and this is where I would say that it could be tied into a school policy, is that law enables us or gives us the opportunity to provide equality to our students, and without that law, it provides a future committee or an entity the ability to discriminate against students.
Yes, and to your point, in my view, I think as elected officials, we do have a role sometimes to come out in front and get ahead of these, and I think if we were to make a stance on this, it might say something to the community and could help that. I think that's why, Republicans and Democrats, businesses, 27 mayors and 21 municipal votes have come out in favor of this.
That being said, we also have another meeting before the election, so we would have another opportunity to revisit the issue, because I do appreciate that not everybody has had the opportunity to investigate and look at this, and we have not had the opportunity to hear from parents.
Mr. Parent?
That was my point.
So what procedurally would we need to do to be able to discuss this at the next meeting?
You could table it.
So the next meeting. My fear is that the next meeting might be too close to the election, and the word might not be out there that we approve this.
Delay the vote. Somebody could take a point of personal privilege and delay the vote.
take a point. Someone could do that. I'm not going to do that, but someone could take a vote of personal.
If we're not going to table it, I would have to abstain. I wouldn't have enough information to make an informed vote.
If someone wants to take a vote of personal privilege and abstain, they could do it.
I'd like to call the question.
I'll do personal privilege, delay the vote.
Okay. Mr. Matucci has taken a personal privilege, so the vote has been delayed. All right. Moving on, unfinished business, Chromebook and solar panels policy. Any public comment?
It was just, you skipped just one piece,
Oh,
I just
sorry
wanted
about that.
around, what did they, you skipped the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, the NEAS&C piece. I just wanted to bring it to folks' attention that we have submitted our application for NEASC to come out and do their visit with us. They're coming out in 2020. But the process begins now, where they have us begin to answer a whole bunch of questions for them. Mr. Crombie is the point man for this, so it's about accreditation and the accreditation for Winthrop High School, whether or not we become an accredited school again. We are light years away from where we were the last time they came out, where we didn't have this. And so I think from a facilities perspective, we will be winning. And my hope is that that continues in all other aspects when they're looking at our staffing and they're looking at our course offerings and our course selection. The first meeting is at the end of this month, and I'll be participating in that meeting with Mr. Crombie. There is a lot of responsibility on the part of the principal and the teachers and the staff in this building in terms of collecting data and providing. They take about a year to collect all kinds of data from us. And they're a pretty demanding group. My understanding is the process now is a lot more user-friendly than it was in the past. It still costs money. I will be looking at an estimate for the total cost for their visit. Their actual visit will be in 2021, but what goes with that is housing of the people that come out, feeding of the people that come out here. So there is a school committee budget item. I just wanted to bring you up to the fact that it's been announced that it's our turn and that we are on top of it, and we'll have that first stakeholders meeting and then start. Mr. Crombie's already made the staff here aware of it because it is quite a bit of involvement for the staff. So working with them to get them willing to take some time out of their day. It will impact classes when they have to come to meetings. It will impact their day in general when they're here visiting. But we'll make sure to stay on top of all those announcements with not only the school committee and the community, because there is a community piece to this, but certainly with our students and staff. So when I have more on that, I'll bring it to your attention, but I just wanted to let you know that that first meeting is coming up, and our application is there so that they know that we would like accreditation. You have to tell them that you would like them to consider you for accreditation, or you don't get it. And so that's where we're at with them, and that was all I had.
All right. Any public comment? Public relations, President Vecchia?
Nope.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Ms. Howard and Mr. Chief Delahanty on the ALICE training that they went over back in last week of September. Disappointed in the amount of parents that showed up to that meeting. That first meeting was for both Fort Banks and
Yeah,
Cummings School.
first meeting was elementary, K to, yeah.
If we had 12 people, I'd be surprised, which is disappointing. I mean,
And we did a lot of outreach for that, so we did a backpack letter, we did an email, and we did a phone call, and folks felt, we got some feedback that people said they didn't get it. We looked in the system to make sure that we had the correct email and whatnot, just to make sure that folks did get it.
it looked like that second group had a bigger showing
They did.
for the high school and the middle school, but it was certainly disappointing with the amount of parents that showed up.
It's a scary topic sometimes.
But it was, there was a lot of information there, with really good knowledge. So maybe in the future, we can figure out something to present it again or something. That, and this weekend, a lot of sports, Miller Field. We got boys soccer at 3:30 on Friday, football at 7, and then on Saturday, girls soccer at 1 o'clock. So let's get out there and support our kids.
Mr. Perrin?
Nothing for me.
Nothing for me. Ms. Powell?
Yes, Bike Winthrop will be having a Halloween fun ride on Saturday, October 27th, to which they are extending an invitation to our students. They're reaching out to the PTOs to see if they can get them involved. That the fun ride for anybody who's not on training wheels is at 3 p.m., and then there'll be a 4 p.m. costume parade at Ingleside for the younger set.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Matucci, second by President Becker, all in favor?
Aye.